Hi, I am Deborah from Armillary Games. Welcome to this short tutorial. This video gives you a quick overview of how to play AstroNavigators, the first and fast module. For detailed rules and references, please check the rulebook. We recommend you to learn and play your first game with this module, especially if you are new to the theme and a casual board gamer. It only takes about 11 pages to learn and only concentrates on the core game mechanics. Let's start with looking at the objective of the game. Your goal is to gather enough knowledge of the stars, of traveling and of lunar phases, in order to travel to the moon. Don't linger too long while learning these skills, because the game is a real space race. The first astronaut on the moon is the winner of the game. Let's look at the phases in one round. A round is also called a month. First, we have the action phase where each player, starting with the first player and then clockwise, choose to plan one of 4 actions in one of the 4 weeks of the month. These actions can be observing, traveling, saving an observation card, or observing a saved card. Once a week is occupied, the next player has to choose another week. This means that the last player has to choose an action in the remaining unoccupied week. After all players have chosen one action in a certain week, the resolution phase is triggered. Each planned action is being resolved chronologically, starting with the first week. After each action resolution, remove the character token or miniature from the week, unless you are planning to calibrate your navigation instruments as an astronaut. In this case, put your character on the lunar phase icon, between the action icons. Once all actions have been triggered, the calibration phase gives players the opportunity to change their astronomer into an astronaut, after which they can still travel, but they cannot observe anymore from Earth. As an astronaut, you can calibrate your onboard space sextant, scanner telescope and gyroscope for the next month. Finally, the current first player executes the planet movement phase by filling each week, in chronological order, with new cards from the observation deck. Each new card ends up on top of a newly formed face-up week deck. Then, the first player moves the sun disk 1 month to the left on the yellow ecliptic zodiac path on the star map. Afterwards, the first player token is passed to the player to the left, who starts a new month with an action phase. Now we know how the phases in a month or round look like. Let's look at the different types of actions that can be planned and how they resolve. The most important action for an astronomer is observing the sky. In most cases, this will be the night sky, and in rare occasions it will be during the day, like during a solar eclipse. The most important observations in this module are those from lunar phases and constellations. You can only score the top card present in the week, during which your astronomer is planning the action. In the case of a lunar phase, the symbol or number of the week needs to be identical to that of the lunar phase card, in order to score the card. In case of a constellation, you need to look at the current position of your vehicle die on the Earth map. This will help you to find your zenith. The zenith is the highest point in the sky above your head. Just follow the row of your current vehicle die's latitude zone towards that of the star map. The same row on the star map will be your zenith. Point the arrow on the armillary card to that row, and you will instantly find your visible sky. This is indicated by the eye icon on the armillary card. Next, the daylight cards need to be aligned to your zenith, because the day length at your location differs from that of another latitude zone. Once your zenith and the reach of the sunlight has been set, compare the region of a constellation's grid on the star map. If the entire constellation falls within the visible region and outside the daylight zone, the constellation card can be scored. Now that we know how important your location is to find your zenith, you might want to know how to change your location. The best way to do that is to travel around the world and change latitude zones when needed. Nevertheless, traveling to a different longitude can be equally as interesting to discover other continents and to use different vehicles, and to eventually get to the launch pad for your journey to the moon. If you choose for traveling while planning in your action phase, you need to turn your die into the preferred vehicle during your action phase, but without making the route just yet. You have to wait until your turn in the resolution phase to execute your trip. Once it is time for your chosen week to resolve your primary travel action, you take the die to a new legal location on the map. Most routes must start and end on the same vehicle icon with a given maximum distance, counting orthogonally, diagonally, or with a mixture of directions. The maximum distances are indicated below the Earth map. Beware, all squares are linked in the polar regions, and a boat may stop on a water square without any vehicle icon. As long as the die doesn't end in a port with a boat icon, the vehicle type cannot be changed. Cars and trains follow visible routes on land, and boats can never traverse land masses without any waterway link on the same square. Each time you use a type of vehicle for the first time, you gain knowledge points, and you flip its corresponding token on the player board. Every new continent visited also gives you knowledge points and a new continent tile. The same vehicles may be used and continents may be revisited, but no new rewards will be granted. Continent tiles can be spent and flipped to activate one of the vehicle icons after your primary travel action to make travel connections. Those connections might even grant you new points and tiles for interesting travel combinations. The next possible action is the planning action. Instead of scoring a card directly, you can save a card when it is not yet observable. You can save the observation card in the designated area, at the right side of your player board. During another month, you might be able to choose the right week for a lunar phase or to travel to the right spot at the right time in the year to eventually observe the constellation. When that moment arises, you can choose the planned observation action and put your saved card on top of the current week during your action phase in order to score the card. Scoring observation cards happens immediately in the resolution phase when the lunar phase matches the week or when a complete constellation area on the observation card falls within your visible sky range. Each player can only observe the same observation card once per game. Most lunar phases aren't worth any navigation knowledge. They are nevertheless powerful, because they activate the corresponding lunar phase token. Constellation cards are generally worth 5 navigation knowledge. These cards also have one or more set symbols on top. 2 to 3 different constellation cards can form one or several sets. Per set scored you earn 10 extra points. And when you do, activate the corresponding set token on your player board. You can only score each set symbol once during the game. Now, I mentioned that lunar phase tokens are powerful, but constellation set tokens are what really drives the space race. While lunar phase tokens can negate difficulty values on the trajectory, constellation set tokens can accelerate your spaceship. Before we launch ourselves into the endgame, let's take a look at how we can spend these tokens during the calibration phase. If there are more astronauts during the calibration phase, the calibration order follows the week order chronologically. From this point on, the player is not allowed to conduct more observations, except for travel movements. When a one-year cycle has been completed, all players must finish their navigator training as astronomers. This is, however, only the case for the first and fast module. Flip the year cycle token to the parachute side. No vehicle or continent set bonuses are granted any longer. The end of the next year cycle now triggers the end of the game, if there is no moon landing. During the calibration phase, you can spend an active lunar phase token on the space sextant, or a constellation set token on the scanner telescope. An extra activated constellation set token from around the gyroscope can be placed on the gyroscope's attitude indicator to raise the odds. One of both set icons, on the scanner telescope and attitude indicator, has to appear in the observation area during planet movement to potentially get an extra movement on the lunar trajectory. In the next resolution phase, your astronaut must be present in the week with the top observation card bearing the same set icon. Any token on the sextant or scanner telescope is spent during the next resolution phase. The token on the gyroscope can be used again later and is put back on its original position, unspent. No gyroscope calibration is possible without scanner telescope calibration, and is therefore only possible if you have at least 2 set tokens. The lunar phase spent on the space sextant can negate any tile value encountered during the next resolution phase. However, when the newly passed trajectory tile was unrevealed, you may not choose between this and the previous tile. After launching, movements go from the Earth map to the first available stage on the lunar trajectory. Each movement goes to the next available stage. If unavailable and thus occupied according to player count, skip stages until the next available stage or moon landing. Every tile can hold 2 vehicle dice in a 3 to 4 player game and 1 vehicle die in a 1 to 2 player game. In the rules, it is called spacecraft housing. Add the lunar module token on top of your vehicle die while passing stage 3. Beware, stage 5 is not the last stage. The lunar surface is the last stage of the outbound trajectory. Put the lunar module token there to indicate landing. Stage values are negative difficulty values, and its total absolute value may never exceed the total value of your navigation knowledge. The difficulty value of a trajectory tile is added to your difficulty value dial with each step, unless mitigated in any way by skipping, due to a full spacecraft housing, or by using a lunar phase token. If the total amount of the gathered difficulty value would ever exceed your navigation knowledge, you need to spend the abort token by flipping it to its gray side, and restart at your previously used launch pad, without regaining any spent lunar phase or constellation set token, but resetting the difficulty value to 0. During the calibration phase, if your difficulty value hasn't surpassed your navigation knowledge yet, you may spend the abort stage token by flipping it to its gray side, in order to restart at the launch pad. After resetting the difficulty value, the abort stage icon does grant you all spent lunar phase and constellation set tokens back. The winner is the first astronaut arriving on the lunar surface. During this first and fast module, you should ignore the time, telescope, and solar protection symbols. They form no restrictions during a game in this module. No character card abilities, hidden agendas, quests, instruments, nor alternate launch sites are used in this game either. Ignore all non-vehicle icons on the continent tiles. I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial for your first game. If you have any questions about the rules of this module, or about any more advanced module rules, please consult the rulebook or contact us on the AstroNavigators website, on BoardGameGeek, on Discord, on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. I am Deborah from Armillary Games. Happy gaming and thanks for watching!